everyone, this is Sarah from Ned and Mimi, and in this video I'm going to show you how to crochet this super chunky basket. So crochet baskets are great for storing anything around the house, but surprise surprise, my favorite thing to store in them is yarn. So I will give you a quick run through of the steps to crochet this basket. So we are going to start with the base, and we start with a simple magic circle and work our way out until we reach the required circumference. So for the base I have used the waistcoat stitch, and it's sometimes called the knit stitch because it looks kind of like knitting, and this stitch is a variation on your basic single crochet, and all it means is that instead of working into the top of a stitch like you normally would when you're crocheting, you work in between these two legs here, and it creates a really nice dense fabric, and it's perfect for the base of baskets or anything where you want your finished project to be nice and thick and have no gaps. So then we finish off the base with a round of slip stitches all the way around, and then we start to work the sides of the basket, and we do this by working the first round, I don't know if you can see it here, into the back loop of the last round of the base. So it kind of takes us from working flat to turning the edge and going up the sides of the basket. And then my favorite thing about this basket is the diagonal chevron stitch. So this just creates this lovely V shape or kind of diagonal V or chevron pattern up the side of the basket, and it's really easy. It's a variation on the single crochet again, even though I know it probably looks a lot more complicated than that. I promise it really isn't once you get into it. And then we just have to repeat that same round all the way up until we're ready to create our handles, and they're also very easy to do. We just skip some stitches, do some chains to create the handles, and then work one final round of slip stitches and single crochets into the handles, and that's it. And one last thing before I get started. So for my basket I used some stash yarn, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what it was, but I know that it was a super chunky or super bulky, so that's number 6 weight yarn, and I used a 7mm crochet hook, and I did that because I wanted the stitches to be kind of nice and tight and to give the basket some structure, and it's still a little bit floppy, but I'm pretty happy with it. So the hook and the yarn that you choose are kind of going to depend on each other. So if you use a t-shirt yarn, for example, t-shirt yarns can vary a lot in their thickness, so you might find that you need to use an 8mm hook or maybe even a 10, depending on how thick the yarn is. And then if you decide to go for an acrylic super bulky like what I have used here, I think maybe a 6.5 or 7mm hook should do great, but you might have to experiment a little. And for this project I wouldn't be too concerned about making your basket exactly the same size as what mine is. You just need to follow the pattern, and your basket might end up a little bit larger, a little bit smaller, and you could actually make all different sizes baskets by just stopping when you have reached the size of the base that you want, and the rest of the pattern is exactly the same. After that, your stitch counts might be a little different to mine, but the pattern itself is exactly the same. So without further ado, let's get started. So we are going to start with a simple magic circle. And then chain 1 and work 6 single crochets into the circle. And then I am just going to pull on the tail to close up that circle. And that is our first round done. So for round 2, I am not going to join to the end of round 1 with a slip stitch. I'm just going to continue working directly into that first stitch. And for this round, I'm going to start with 2 waistcoat stitches. So going in between those 2 legs of the first stitch, and I'm going to do 2 waistcoat stitches in each stitch around. So I'm going to have a count of 12 waistcoat stitches at the end of this round. So you might find it a little tricky to get the placement of these stitches in this round, but it becomes much easier as your circle gets bigger, and it becomes a lot easier to find where to put your hook, and it becomes easier to make the stitches too. And that is round 3 complete, and now we are ready to get started on round 4. So round 4 is going to be very similar. We're going to do 2 stitches in the first stitch and then 2 individual waistcoat stitches. So there are 2, now 2 in the next stitch, and then 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. And again, we're just going to repeat that pattern all the way around, and we will have a total of 24 stitches at the end of this round. And that is round 4 complete. Now round 5 is going to start exactly the same. So 2 waistcoat stitches and then 3 individual waistcoat stitches. And as with the previous rounds, we just repeat this pattern all the way around. So 2 in the same stitch, followed by 3 individual stitches. And at the end of this round, we will have a total of 30 stitches. And that brings us to the end of round 5. Now round 6 is going to be a little different, and we are just going to offset the increases on this round. And the reason we do this is to make sure that we end up with a circle and not a hexagon shape. So I'm going to work 2 individual waistcoat stitches for the first 2 stitches, and just mark that first stitch with a marker. And now I'm going to do my increase. So there's my 2 waistcoat stitches in 1 stitch, and now I am going to do 4 individual waistcoat stitches. And then I will do another increase, so 2 in the same stitch, followed by 4 individual waistcoat stitches. And then I am going to repeat those 6 stitches all the way around until I have 3 stitches left before the stitch marker. Okay, so I have 3 stitches left, and I'm going to work 1 final increase and then finish off with 2 individual waistcoat stitches. And that is round 6. Now I am not going to crochet the rest of the base, but I am going to leave the written instructions here so you can pause the video and take note of them, or you can also get the written instructions in the pattern, which is linked below. So you can continue working the base of the basket, and you can make the same size as mine, or you can make it a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, and then come back into the video where we will finish off the base and continue working the sides. Alrighty, so I am just working the last few stitches of round 11, and then there is just 1 more round to go to complete the base. And on each round we have increased by 6 stitches, so now at the end of round 11 we should have a total of 66 stitches. So the final round is simply a round of slip stitches all the way around. And again, not forgetting to mark that first slip stitch with a stitch marker, because this one could be a little tricky to find when we come to the end of the round. So I am nearly at the end of my slip stitch round, and at the end of this round you can either join with a slip stitch to the first stitch, or I am also going to show you how to do a seamless join. Now this is a little bit more work, but I think that it does give a much neater finish, so you can give it a go if you would like. So we've removed the hook from the loop, and now we're going to insert the hook from the back to the front of our work through the back loop of that very first slip stitch. Then we take the loop, place it on top of the hook and pull it through to the back. Now there is one more step, and I'm going to slow down the video for this one because it can be a little bit tricky. So if we turn our work, we are looking at the last waistcoat stitch round. So you can see that back loop of the very first stitch of round 11, so the final waistcoat stitch round. And we insert our hook into that back loop. Now take the loop to the back of our work and then wrap the yarn in front of it, and then keep the yarn to the back. So now we are going to put the loop back onto the hook and pull it through to the front. And now we will have finished our seamless join, and our yarn and hook are in the correct position to begin the next round, which will be the sides of the basket. So we chain 1, and then we are going to single crochet in the back loop of each stitch all the way along. So just notice that this back loop is the back loop from round 11, so the last waistcoat stitch round, and not the slip stitch round. So we'll just continue to single crochet all the way around until we get back to the start. So we have finished that first round, and at the end of this round you should have 66 single crochet stitches. So you might just want to do a quick check on that, and we're going to begin the next round working into the first single crochet stitch. So we're not going to join, we're going to start working directly into that stitch. So for round 2 we are going to start with 2 single crochet stitches, and after this we are going to work our first long single crochet 2 together. So to make this stitch, we're going to insert the hook back into the same place as that very first single crochet and pull up a long loop. And now we're going to look at the next stitch. So this is the third stitch in the round, and we're going to work into the same stitch but 2 rows down and pull up another extra long loop. So at this stage we have 3 loops on our hook. Then we yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that is our first long single crochet 2 together made. Now I'm going to move on to the next stitch. So this is the 4th stitch in the round, and I'm going to work a single crochet in each of those stitches. And then I'm going to work my second long single crochet 2 together. So inserting the hook back into the same place as that first single crochet and pulling up a long loop, and now moving on to the next stitch and inserting the hook into the same stitch but 2 rows down and pulling up another long loop. Then yarn over and pull through the 3 loops. And that is the pattern. So we're going to repeat that all the way along the round, working 2 single crochet stitches, followed by a long single crochet 2 together. So I am going to continue with this pattern all the way around, and then I will show you how to finish off this round. Alrighty, so I have 3 stitches left to work in this round, so I am going to work my 2 single crochets as normal and then work 1 final long single crochet 2 together. And that is the round complete. So let's get straight into the next round. So this round is going to start a little differently. We are going to work a single crochet in each of the first 3 stitches this time. And we will mark the first stitch of the round with our stitch marker. So now we are going to skip that very first stitch and work our long single crochet 2 together into the same place as that second single crochet, pulling up a long loop, then finding the next stitch, inserting our hook there and pulling up a second long loop, and then pull through 3 loops to complete that stitch. And for the rest of the round, the pattern is exactly the same as the previous round. So we'll do 2 single crochet stitches followed by a long single crochet 2 together. So I am just going to continue on with that pattern all the way around. And because we started this round a little differently to the previous one, we're also going to finish this round a little differently. So I will show you how to do that. Okay, so we are just at the end of this round and we have 2 stitches left to work. So I'm going to do 2 single crochets, 1 in each of the last 2 stitches, and then I'm going to work my final long single crochet 2 together. And the second leg of this stitch is actually going to be worked into the same place as the first marked stitch, so the first stitch of your round, but 2 rows below. So we're working over that first marked stitch. And we're going to work the next round exactly the same as that previous round, starting with our 3 single crochet stitches. So what we're doing here really is moving the start of the round 1 stitch to the left as we work each round. So I am going to pause the video here and I am going to continue repeating round 3. And for my basket, I worked a total of 9 rounds for the sides, but you can obviously work as many or as little rounds as you want, depending on the size that you want your basket to be. So I will pause here and then come back in to show you how to create the handles. And we are nearly done. So I have worked my 9 rounds in total and I love the way my basket is looking. And now I'm going to just mark out where the handles are going to be using 4 stitch markers. So I'm going to place my stitch markers in the following stitches. So stitch number 15, and stitch number 22, so that's the first handle marked off. Then count on to stitch number 48, and finally stitch number 55. Now if you have decided to make your basket base a little smaller or bigger than mine, you might have to do a little math just to work out where you're going to position your handles. Okay, so this handle round is going to start in exactly the same way. So with my 3 single crochet stitches. And I am going to work the long single crochet 2 together pattern all the way to the first stitch marker. So that's the first one done. Now my 2 single crochet stitches, long single crochet 2 together, and so on to the first stitch marker. Okay, so I have 1 stitch left before that stitch marker, so I'm going to single crochet in that stitch, and now I am going to chain 10. This is to create the first handle. Then I'm going to skip the next 8 stitches, so both stitch markers, going to skip both of those, work a single crochet in the next stitch, and my second single crochet in the next stitch. And then I can continue with the pattern until I come to the third stitch marker. Okay, so again working 1 single crochet in that stitch before the stitch marker, and then chaining 10 for my second handle. Then skipping the next 8 stitches and working a single crochet in the stitch after the last stitch marker, and my second one in the next stitch, and then I can just continue the pattern as normal until I get back to the start of the round. Now at the end of this round I have 3 stitches left, so I'm going to work my 2 single crochets as normal, and then 1 final long single crochet 2 together, and that should bring us to the stitch just before the marked stitch at the start of the round. And we are almost done. So the final round is very easy, and it's just going to give a nice finish to the top of our basket. So we will slip stitch in each stitch until we come to the handles. So just marking that first stitch, and then continuing to slip stitch all the way to that chain 10 space. So to complete the first handle, I am going to work 11 single crochet stitches around that chain 10. So that's the first handle done. Now I am going to slip stitch all the way to the second handle and then do the exact same thing for that handle. So 11 single crochet stitches around that chain, and then continuing on with my slip stitches until I come to the start of the round. Okay, so I'm back at the start of the round, so now I can cut my yarn and I'm going to pull the tail all the way through and then work an invisible join just to finish off this round. So I'm actually going to use a smaller hook to do this join just because I think it makes it a little bit easier. So with my smaller hook, I'm going to insert it from back to the front through the first stitch of the round and then pull the tail all the way through. And now I'm going to come up through the back of the last stitch and through the center of that final slip stitch and yarn over the tail and then pull it all the way through to the back and just tidy that up a little bit. So it's not completely invisible, but I think it is pretty good. And now all I need to do is weave in that tail and I'm done. And there we have it, our basket is complete. So I have woven in my tail, just one tail down along here, and that's all I had to do to finish off the basket. So I really hope that you have enjoyed this project, and if you have a second to like and subscribe, that would be absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.